Venus and star blessings. Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing well. It's good to be back after, well, I thought I was going to take a much longer break, but I've managed to move and settle in reasonably well so far. So today I just want to talk a little bit about Scorpio season, which just began, and the Mars-Pluto opposition, which is quite a big feature as it's going to take place on three separate occasions. The first one coming up, it's already within orb right now. The exact date is I think, 3rd of November. And then the next opposition, well, let me just backtrack. The first opposition will be Cancer Capricorn. So Mars in Cancer, Pluto in Capricorn in just a few days' time. And the next opposition will take place in Leo and Aquarius, which will be in January of 2025. And then the third one will be in April of 2025. So we've got um, quite an important passage with Mars and Pluto for the next several months, actually. And this is quite significant because the first opposition is taking place between Cancer Capricorn, which is where Pluto finally completes the journey of being in Capricorn. And then the next two oppositions take place in different signs. So there's something really important presenting for us, from an evolutionary level relative to our personal power and our soul. Pluto and Mars both speak to personal power. Pluto speaks to the soul. And, Mars is really the servant of Pluto, right? And some people don't like that word because it tends to perhaps perhaps make people feel, I don't want to be a servant, I need to feel powerful. I need to feel like I'm up there, not down here. But we need to understand the psychology of that, and what that really means on an astrological level. Because at the end of the day, Pluto is the higher octave of Mars. It's an incredibly powerful force, Pluto, that is. And of course, so is Mars. But the key between Mars and Pluto aspects really is about the soul alignment. That is recognizing our own personal power with consciousness and with awareness, so that we use our personal power not to hurt others and not to push people, but merely to use it for our own self-confidence, self-assertiveness in a healthy way versus a conflicting way. Mars is the planet of conflict. And I was just having a conversation with my best friend, who is also the person that I first studied astrology with many, many, many moons ago. And we're talking about this energy, and we were just acknowledging that, the fact of the matter is that Mars is always going to be there. Pluto is always going to be there. It's not like in 20 years or 30 years or 100 years or 10 years, whatever, that Mars is not going to be in existence anymore. So these are archetypes, because these are planets and stars and asteroids, have an archetypal expression, right? And so we are the living, breathing embodiment of these archetypes for infinity. And so the key about all these archetypes is self-awareness, right? It's about how we are embodying these energies with consciousness and awareness, right? Versus greed, control, greed of power, greed of money, greed of whatever it may be, right? And also hidden agendas and hidden motives for the purposes of personal gain, and hindering and hurting other people in the process. We know there's a shit load of that going on the earth. Has been going on forever, really, in a way. But we certainly know that in the last 12 months, there's been an extremity of that in certain regions of the earth, which are currently exploding in other areas of the earth close to that other area. You all know what I'm talking about. I don't want to start getting more specific about that because I want to try and focus our energy on self-awareness, actually, because Mars is not a planet of self-awareness. Mars is a planet of my personal sense of will, my personal sense of power, and the awareness that we bring in really comes from more of an objective position. You know, we have to have objectivity in how we are using that Mars energy, or we align with it in such a personal way that we don't see, you know, very clearly. We don't have that objective perspective on the impact that we have in terms of how we use our will and drive. And this is all really significant even for Scorpio season, of course, because the sun in Scorpio is ruled by Mars and Pluto. Those are the two rulers to Scorpio. The traditional ruler is Mars and the modern ruler is Pluto. But both those planets correspond to Scorpio. And given the sun is in Scorpio, whilst we are having a Mars-Pluto opposition, we can safely say that the Mars, Martian, Plutonian, Scorpion energies are extremely intense at the moment. There's no two ways about it. So let me just share my screen and just bring up a chart for today. And let's have a little look-see. Okay, so I'm facing the east now, by the way, which is fantastic. So I've got the morning sunrise right here. And I bring this up because I'm a Venus morning star. And because I've now had this lived experience of, I've lived most of my life in the east side, and that's always felt I've just felt really at home with that, with living in the East, seeing the sunrise, for instance. That's felt so natural and normal to me, even though I'm a night birth. This is how powerful our Venus star points are as well. When I moved to the Western side, which was 2 years ago, and I lived in the Western side, and so I was seeing the sunset, which is glorious unto itself. But I never felt at home there. I never felt it just didn't feel right for me. And so having moved back into the east now, my Venus morning star, she feels more at home here. And for those and I've got a Scorpio morning Venus star point, right, as my main Venus star point. And the Scorpio Venus star point, which is one of the Venus star points on the wheel, there's always only 5 signs on the wheel, and Scorpio is still one of them, although there was a new sign come onto the wheel just recently, which was Libra, because the Venus star signs moved backwards in the zodiac. Although Libra got activated on the wheel, we still have a few years left of that Venus star point moving back into Scorpio, the last degrees of Scorpio. So what was I thinking there? Oh, that's right. I was just going to say that all these planets in Scorpio at the moment, such as the Sun, such as Mercury, Venus has already been past it. But the Sun and Mercury are moving over that Scorpio Venus star point. So if if the head of your pentagram is the Scorpio star point, Scorpio season is quite potent, quite important relative to your Venus star point, right? So this is a season where the Scorpio Venus star point gets a spotlight on it, if you like. And even if it's not the head of your pentagram, it will be perhaps one of the arms, right? Or one of the legs on the pentagram. So still an important point, just a different function, a different theme, connecting to different things in your life and in your birth chart. So that's another thing to consider with the Sun in Scorpio. There's activations happening to the Scorpio Venus star point. So not only do we have the sun in Scorpio, Scorpio season, Venus has been through Scorpio. Of course, I'm speaking to tropical astrology today. Mercury is in Scorpio more than halfway through. And we have a Mars-Pluto opposition, which are the two rulers to the sun in Scorpio, or they're the dispositors, right, of the sun and Mercury in Scorpio and of the Venus star point. So there's, in one way, I never look at things in a black and white manner because nothing is black and white. But we could say very simply that there's two prominent, distinct levels of this Scorpio season at the moment. And what it is this: it's the Scorpio Venus star point on the wheel being activated, the spotlight goes on it. And what is the Scorpio Venus star point? It is what you are inherently gifted and talented with by the goddess Venus, in that she imprinted you with a particular gift when you were born. That's what the Venus star point activates. It's an extremely high vibration of Venus and an extremely high vibration of the heart, and an extremely high vibration of our talents that the goddess gifted us with. So it's a real high point, if you like, right? So having Scorpio season, with Mercury in Scorpio, and particularly this Mars-Pluto opposition, because they are the rulers of all this Scorpio energy, there's, as I was going to say, there are two distinct themes that are very, very obvious. And there will be, colors and shades and themes and patterns in between, naturally, right? Because nothing is black and white. But the two very prominent themes that are more likely than not are, for certain individuals, it will be power struggles, conflict. And on the other hand, for certain individuals, it will be a greater sense of integration of our own personal power, bringing that into a type of embodiment with consciousness and awareness, right? That is using our personal power with awareness, like I was saying at the very beginning, using our personal power with wisdom, with awareness, with insight, knowing, being aware of our actions and the consequences or the impact that they have. That takes insight, that takes awareness, and that takes conscious choice, right? And some people might think, well, yeah, that's easy. Well, it's not easy. I can tell you it's not easy, especially when you're talking about two planets here, Mars, Pluto, that strictly correspond to power and control. And, it's pretty obvious when we look at the world, the collective and humanity, the level of egocentric greed and power is highly, highly activated. Unfortunately, there's still, so much division and so much projection. And so Mars is always going to be there, Pluto is always going to be there. And those planets, those archetypes, those symbols, their mythologies, their stories, it's always there as a possibility, the various components of what these planets represent. That doesn't ever fade away. What does happen is that we become more conscious. And so we become more aware of, the actions that we are taking. So really at the highest level, Mars and Pluto can be a portal, a passage, and this one is highly significant because it's happening over so many months. So it's showing us that we have ample opportunity, if you like, to really integrate this energy consciously. And or in the wrong hands, as it were, wrong hands, this energy is unfortunately, potentially going to exacerbate or, intensify the current stirrings of these powers that are conflicting with certain groups or whatever it may be, right? That's just a given almost. So this is the main real highlight, relative to Scorpio season. And, at a more positive level, as I said, it's a very powerful time for the Venus star point. I think with the Venus star point, just noticing how dark that looks there. Put it over there. I'm just getting used to this space. So don't mind me while I flick around. I think with the Venus star point, this is what it feels like to me, at least, in having observed the Venus star point in on a daily basis, if you like, and just understanding more and more what the Venus star point represents for us. It is without question that when there are certain planets passing over a particular part of the zodiac that activates your Venus star point, then that Venus star point, as I said, it gets a spotlight on it, right? So the energy it's not that it's lying dormant, as it were, but it does come to life more when planets pass over it, right? There's no question about that. It's a little bit like, pretend this was your birth chart and see here, there's nothing in the second house, for example. Well, once you get a Saturn or Pluto or any planet for that matter passing through your second house, depending on how long that planet will be moving through the second house, then, that part of your life gets a spotlight on it, right? It gets animated. Things sort of come to life, as it were. It's a kind of similar thing with the Venus star point. She's always there. She has gifted you with certain imprints, but there are certain times that she gets sort of more energy poured into her by the planets passing through the sign that she's in. So if you've got a Scorpio Venus star point as the head of your pentagram, every Scorpio season is a really powerful opportunity to really delve more deeply into what these gifts are that Venus imprinted within you, right? So it depends on, where your Scorpio Venus star point resides in your birth chart. You need to consider that. You need to consider what aspects she has to her and so forth. It's just like any interpretation of any planet in the chart. When you're looking at a planet, you're always looking at what sign is it in, what house is it in, what aspects does it have, right? Because those are all the details that create the whole picture of what's there, right? So it's the same thing with the Scorpio Venus star point, for instance. So I think with Scorpio season, this is just, again, another opportunity to delve more deeply into the richness and the depth of this Scorpio Venus star point, because Scorpio itself, we know, is an incredibly deeply complex archetype, for better or for worse, right? And it is the archetype that will probe, that will ignite or inspire or activate within us that desires are ruled by Scorpio or associated to Scorpio, Mars and Pluto. So when Scorpio season arrives, that the desire aspect within us is quite heightened, if you like. It's quite, the energy is quite potent. And there's nothing wrong with desire at all, provided we have awareness over our own desires and how we are trying to tune into those desires, what we are doing to have those desires be met or connected to, and so forth, right? We have, a multitude of desires. That's part of the function of the soul. That's why the soul takes a physical body, right? And is born, incarnated, right? And chooses a specific life path and journey, which involves a lot of different things, because it has very specific desires. So desires are not inherently wrong at all. The key, however, is always about becoming conscious and aware of those desires and what we are doing to fulfill them and satisfy them. And, what is the course of action we are taking around that? Where are our morals? Where is our integrity? How honest are we being? And so forth. Scorpio will always try to, um, well, let me put it like this. In Libra, which was the season we just had, Libra is the mirror, right? It's the mirror of what we want to see and or what we don't want to see. It's simply the mirror. So it shows everything that's there, particularly on the surface level. And Scorpio being the next sign on the wheel, it basically it smashes through that mirror and just dives deep into all the realms that are hidden, all the things that are concealed, all the things that people hide, the secrets, that whatever it is. So, Scorpio is probably the greatest archetype in terms of self-psychology or studying psychology or being a therapist or an analyst, psychoanalyst, etc. It is the sign that has that ability to probe in depths that, still waters run deep, right? There's no end in terms of where how deep Scorpio can go and what it will uncover. And so I guess from a collective level, when Scorpio season comes up, depending on the context of everything that's happening on the earth, it's going to reveal and show things. And there's a lot of things that have been, sort of fast-tracked, exposed over the last three years, especially, I think, and given what is transpiring at the moment, we're just going to see a lot more of that and a much more intensified version. But, just circling back to our own position, it's always just an opportunity for us to probe more deeply or delve more deeply into aspects of our own soul, into aspects of our own desires, and how we might be fulfilling those desires and what are we doing, in our life, what course of action are we taking? Because we have this Mars-Pluto opposition, which is about action. Now, the problem with an opposition, initially at least, is that an opposition is two polarized forces, two polarized energies initially. And so typically what happens with a Mars-Pluto opposition, you would be the Mars and you are likely to project the Pluto onto somebody else. That can be an individual, that can be a group, that can be an organization, whatever or whoever. And the minute we project the Pluto outside of ourselves onto either an individual or a group or whatever it is, then we are seeing the projection of Pluto onto that group or on that individual. And what are we seeing when we are projecting? Because when we've projected something, we've lost sort of touch with it, right? We've disowned it, whether that's consciously or unconsciously. Typically, it's unconsciously. And the moment we've projected and we've disowned and disconnected from that, we are seeing that power in the other individual because we are projecting it right onto that person. It's like a hook. So that's the problem with oppositions initially, and especially when you're talking about two planets that specifically have to do with power and desire and control and a myriad of other things as well. The greatest thing about oppositions is that ultimately the reward and the key to an opposition by integration and self-awareness is exactly that, is the experience of having a greater sense of awareness. And so through that awareness, we bring those energies together aligned within us versus projecting one out there and taking hold of the other. And that's the very, very difficult thing with a Mars-Pluto opposition. There's not a lot of people on the planet that I I think, would be able to say in no uncertain terms, if they've got a Mars Pluto opposition in their chart, for example, that yes, I'm totally embodied with that energy. I don't project it anymore. I don't, experience that conflict anymore, all those power struggles anymore. It's virtually impossible, but it's not impossible, but it takes a lot of insight and a lot of awareness. You'd be surprised, actually, how much insight and awareness and understanding it takes to manage this type of energy. Because you were talking about these two energies are like bombs, okay? And we know there's bombs being released left, right, and center in certain parts of the world. That's this energy right here as well. And unfortunately, because this is going to be in play until April 2025, it feels to me like things are going to, if we never thought they could, this energy would potentially, escalate things even further. And that is concerning. But at the end of the day, we've always had in this world things like plagues or wars or conflicts or divisions and things like that. This is not a new thing. When you look back historically, these sorts of events have always been going on in one way or another. And so it's not about implanting fear and focusing too much on the negative potential consequences and so forth, but rather it's about focusing on our own, what we can control within ourselves. Because when we understand that and we truly work with that within ourselves, it is only then that we can see things differently out there as well. It's the whole the whole trip here, the whole journey here is about becoming conscious, basically. So what's going to happen in November is that Saturn will go direct, which is cool. I'm looking forward to that. Saturn can be a bit of a drag. We all know that, but he is the master teacher. He is the master teacher. And I've only learnt that in the later years of my life, because Saturn is quite an important planet in my chart. It's the traditional ruler of my moon and my ascendant, being Aquarius. It's very strategically placed in my birth chart. So I've had to really develop a lot of respect for Saturn and work, with that energy versus feeling it coming at me, which is what I felt for a very long time since I was a child. So in any case, Saturn will be going direct on the 16th of November, which I will come back and perhaps speak to that separately, but I think it's just good to note that because that's important. Pluto, as we know, just recently went direct. And, next month is going to be a really big month, actually, because Pluto will finally go into Aquarius, although, it's at that minuscule, last final tiny little stage, of it being at this anaretic degree, right? But next month is quite a hallmark, because Pluto goes into Aquarius to never return to this sign in our lifetime, right? So it's a very important month from that perspective. Also, Saturn will go direct, and Pluto will be direct as well. Uranus will remain retrograde for a little while longer. I think Mercury goes retrograde as well. And of course, Mars does. Mars goes retrograde in December. So we'll, certainly come back and talk about that at a later stage. But I think the important thing to note with Mars retrograde, sorry, just give me a second. When does Mercury go retro? Yeah, on the 26th of November. That's what I thought. So, next month is a big month because we've got Saturn going direct, Mercury going retrograde. Pluto's already direct. Um, and this Mars-Pluto opposition is, it is the theme, really. A very big theme, over the next few months. And I think unfortunately, we are going to see, a lot of the negative side of the Mars Pluto simply because of the state of affairs. It's a given virtually. But once again, I think we just need to focus on ourselves and how we are personally aligning with our own personal power. Um, I mean, it's not to be, it's not to be taken for granted, that um, we just continuously go through, highs and lows, right? And sometimes they're longer periods and sometimes they're shorter periods. There's no one on this planet that just has all highs and all lows. Everyone has a mixture, right? Um, so it's what I'm trying to say, I think, is that when a Mars Pluto opposition presents like this and it's active, for quite a few months, what is it, 6 months, whatever it is, everyone can benefit from this portal of energy. Everyone can grow. Every single person can grow from this. And the growth that can come out of it can be, leaps and bounds of soul growth, depending on who we are and how much awareness we have. But we're talking about like the two most powerful planets relative to power. So, when when that shows up, it's literally an opportunity to really grow in those ways. And the choice is always ours. We do actually have enormous free will, enormous. And the more, here's the key again, the more awareness we have, the more insight we have, the more consciousness we have, then the more we can actually align with our own free will. I think when people have very little awareness, very little insight, and are very, very unconscious, not everyone, but a lot of people in that bracket, if you like, can feel very victimized, by life, can feel they are a victim of everything and everyone and life itself because they're not in touch with their own personal power. But it's a really tricky thing because personal power can be used, with real agenda. So a person has awareness of what they're doing, but they're specifically choosing through their awareness to use that energy in a very destructive manner, whether it's towards themselves or towards others. So, it's a bit of a conundrum. Like it's a bit tricky. Awareness can make someone be very agenda oriented, not direct and honest with their actions and their motives. And then on the other hand, it can also, you'll find people that actually are more congruent and more aligned with personal power in an authentic manner. And they are using that energy in a much more conscious and healthy way. And I would say that a lot of people won't be using it like that. It's just um, if we break it down to consensus state, that is the majority of people on the planet are conditioned. It's called the consensus state, right? What does it mean to be conditioned? It means that you've come in with various conditioned imprints and still haven't grown out of them. So still functioning at that Saturnian structure of society, that conscious construct of your reality is defined and depicted by Saturn, probably in the most negative way. So it's only when we access Uranus that we really start to break those Saturn walls and have a healthier relationship with Saturn where we've integrated, we've become our own authority, and we use all these energies much more consciously. Mars Pluto it's a lot trickier because again, it connects to, rage, anger. Some of them, the most diabolical atrocities that speak to harming and killing, right? um, and harming others and so forth, is a Mars-Pluto type of energy, Saturn as well. I've seen Saturn-Pluto aspects really prominent in serial killers' charts, for instance, because Saturn and Mars can bring up this cruelty, a real cruel kind of person who just has no empathy, no compassion, no sensitivity, you know. And Mars Pluto is it's so power focused, power based. And if there's no awareness and consciousness there, then that power is going to be it's going to feel for those people that they are, it's me against them. It's me against her. It's me against him. You know, it's this combative, competitive power energy, right? So once again, it's always up to us how we tune into these energies. But needless to say, this Scorpio season is going to be incredibly intense because of this Mars-Pluto opposition, particularly. So I think it's, yeah, I think we just need to try our best to just observe ourselves, you know, as much as we can, because you can't be constantly observant and conscious and aware of every single thing, because 85% of our behavior is motivated from the unconscious. So Mars is a reactive energy. It's not a reflective energy, it's a reactive energy. And Pluto, you know, yes, it's the soul at the highest level, but Pluto can also be annihilation, you know, devastation. It can be any and all of those things as well. So very, very, very intense energies. And we need to just watch ourselves and, you know, how we are working with other people, how we are responding or reacting to other people, because it can be the slightest fucking thing, right, that ticks you off and it just goes off like a bomb, right? It's an impulse and a strong instinctual reaction, right? Where there's no insight, no reflective, you know, things going on there. It can just trigger that kind of reaction, right? That's why I'm saying we really need to try our best to monitor whatever situation presents, because there will be challenging situations for all of us in different ways. There's no two ways about it. Of course, that will be depicted quite a lot through the houses that these two planets are moving through in your birth chart. That's going to describe the environment that these energies are saying, hey, here I am. So yeah, we just need to really monitor ourselves to our best capability, because it is very easy to just explode like a bomb. Yeah. It's always really intense talking about Scorpio season, because it is an intense archetype. But, at the same time, it is represented by the scorpion, um, the snake, the eagle, and the phoenix. Those are the four animals that really reflect the different facets and complexities of Scorpio. And obviously, the Phoenix is the ultimate one. It's not there randomly, accidentally. It is very specific to the archetype of Scorpio, which lets us know that, and life lets us know this all the time, that there's always new beginnings, Aries, and there's always endings, Scorpio. And there's no evading that. But with an ending, there's always it's always followed by a new beginning. So the phoenix is the most beautiful symbol for that sense of rebirth in our own life. And every time we have Scorpio season, even if we just have one type of theme going on where we can witness ourselves grow and evolve even just that little bit more, right? That's a wonderful thing. So again, it just comes back to our own self-awareness, right? And yeah, there's no evading the intensity of what Scorpio brings up. Because one other thing, and I'll leave it here for now at least, Scorpio, because it is the sign that corresponds to uncovering everything, right? Literally peeling back all the layers of an onion and seeing what's there, right? Um, because of that inherent nature about it, what it therefore has the capacity to do in our lives when we have Scorpio energies, lighting up, is it shows us what we may be resisting, um, and what we have been avoiding, right? Avoiding acknowledging, accepting, recognizing, and so forth. So it's never comfortable to go through Scorpio season because it cracks through all the pleasantries of Libra, all the beauty and the pleasantries, and it just breaks through all of the things that have been covered up, and I'm talking about ourselves now. So our personal limitations, because we all have them, can really be exposed or acknowledged and understood, through Scorpio season. We're able to see more clearly. Scorpio is like the microscope. For better or for worse, it shows us. And, although it's difficult, at the same time, it is an opportunity, isn't it? Because if you are blind to something, or you're in denial of something and you've suppressed it so much, it's barricaded by so many freaking walls or a big massive fortress, you can't see it, or you're not prepared to see it, right? So Scorpio comes in and just, takes all those layers off and shows you and says, okay, there you go. What are you going to do about it? So it is really an opportunity for our personal evolution and growth every time planets move through Scorpio. And, again, like I said at the very beginning, at a lighter level, it is also a period where the Scorpio Venus star point, there's only a few more years left of this, where, it gets activated on the wheel. But if you were born with the Scorpio Venus star point as the head of your pentagram, it will always be a Venus Scorpio star point as the head of your pentagram. Just like when you were born, the sun was, say, at 20 degrees of Pisces. The sun moves on from Pisces, doesn't it? But even though it moves on, you were still born with the sun in Pisces. So that's your imprint of your solar energy. Well, it's the same thing with the Venus star points, because you can look at the Venus star points in terms of them transiting and progressing as well, just like we do with all the other planets. So we have a natal imprint, and then we have this process of growth and evolution as things move. But we are using that natal imprint, right, as our inherent personal soul signature to grow through the journey as things move and shift around. That's it in a nutshell. So I will sign off and I'll be back for more. I'm only just starting to settle in here. So I wasn't even going to come on and do something on Scorpio, but I just felt that I needed to at least do this for today. I'm still in the process of unpacking a few more things. So I'm just, when you move, like this is Pluto on my ascendant for me, finally finding my home. New beginning, right? New life. It's so Pluto on the ascendant. And it's taken me, I've had to go through so much to get to this point. So it's not a small thing. It's if you knew me and my story and what's happened, you'd appreciate more just how significant this is, right? So trust me when I tell you it's super significant. But in any case, whether it's a huge, momentous shift or move, in your life, and I'm talking about moving homes, or whether it's just a somewhat temporary move, in either of those situations, there's there's an adjustment, isn't there? Like, sleeping in a different bedroom, your bed's in a different position, the bathroom's in a different place, everything's, so it's an adjustment. And I've only been here a few days. So just wanted to share that. I'm still adjusting, so bear with me. And I'll be back for much more very, very soon. I'm sending you all much love. I think there's a new moon in Scorpio coming up, isn't there? Which that's going to be the next thing I come back for. Let's just have a quick look. What is it? Yeah, there it is. New moon in Scorpio around the 1st of November. I haven't not even considered that, but that's going to be obviously important. It's a new moon. But I can tell you now to be a lot of similar things to what I've already said today, but I will just look at that a little bit further with some other things that I haven't considered for today. So I shall leave it there, and I'll see you guys, in the next few days with the new moon in Scorpio. Much love, and I've missed speaking to you, so it's nice to be back, and I'll see you soon.